You're having the last sip of your coffee before we go on with the ATM. Well, one-sided lessons are interesting. It would be good to send you off for a walk, and that is something that we're doing all the time in Feldenkrais in ATM, is making a contrast, as I said it, make a contrast between, I'm getting a little, did I put the, I have it too close? Contrast between the habit and the option. And if you really cannot talk to people about habits in any kind of meaningful way until they've had an experience of something that's not a habit. This is maybe not obvious, but Feldenkrais did figure this out. So until I've had a different experience, I can't know that I've always had this reoccurring experience, of myself, you need the contrast. The nervous system needs the contrast. So I like to say it's like, if you have a fish in water, that expression, oh, I felt like a fish out of water. So if you have a fish in water, that's the life of the fish. He's used to the life. She's used to the life. She doesn't give it a second thought. You take that fish out of water, and then the fish goes, oh my God, I've been in water my whole life. I didn't even know, right? It's really like that, isn't it? So all these things about, what's the first sentence in the Awareness Through Movement book? Do you have homework of Awareness Through Movement? There's a lot of books here, I noticed. You have it just in case? So don't open, don't open it. What's the first sentence? What do you think? Where does he start? We have options. Okay, no. You don't know, it's okay. You haven't read it 100 times. There's so many sentences in there anyway you don't remember, and then you open it 10 years later and you go, oh, he put all these new sentences in, it's amazing. So, well, I don't know if I'm going to say exactly word for word, but we act in according to our image of ourselves. And that's really related to habits. They're very intertwined, because somehow my skeletal image is very incomplete. I have these funny ideas, and then I use myself in a way accordingly, and none of it is on a conscious level. It's all pretty accidental, really. When you go back and you sort of deconstruct your personal history, if you see how many things are just bad luck and accident, or the luck of the draw, it's pretty interesting, unless you're one of those people that thinks that everything is fated, then in which case I won't mess with you on it. But you can see, like, broke the clavicle at age 7, stopped moving this, and then that led to that, and, certain things about, but I act, and so I act in accordance. Can I have your book for a second? Well, then I don't know if it's in the preface or the real part of the book. Let's see. It's in the preface. We act in accordance with our self-image. This self-image, which in turn governs our every act, is conditioned in varying degree by 3 factors: heritage, education, and self-education. So this business of the contrast between the habit and an option is a very fundamental principle that we're using all the time in ATM, obviously with a scan, right? Why bother with the scan in the beginning, in the end? So that you can learn to feel the differences, you can learn to compare, you can educate your kinesthetic sense, and learn, to feel what's actually taking place with yourself in a more objective way. I remember the first time I was asked to feel the distance between my ear and the top of my shoulder on one side, the other. I mean, it was like, I don't know, calculus to me. It wasn't easy. But I mean, and why even do it? And what did it mean? But now it seems so obvious, that I actually begin to complete my image of myself in my bones, in my musculoskeletal system in space, means relative to my environment, not just subjectively. And that's part of the plan. That's part of the program. So, all right. So contrast between the habit and the option. And that when I'm teaching workshops today, in one sense, today is almost like a workshop, almost. We'll do a little hands-on. But so when I'm teaching workshops for the public, or when you do your classes, you have to get people on board for knowing that we're going to learn to make new distinctions in the kinesthetic sense, and that for many people that sense has not been properly, carefully educated. And for instance, I often say to groups, so today I'll ask you, and you guys are a year into it, but even within the group, I'm sure the variations in different people's ability to sense the things I'm asking you to sense has to be very high, because the kinesthetic intelligence, if that's a cue, like we have emotional intelligence, we have, well, I don't know, there's many different kinds of intelligences, but the kinesthetic intelligence is very unequally developed in any given group of people, unless you take a group of people that have trained it, right? How many of you have really trained? You don't have to raise your hand, but you see what I'm saying. So I'm going to ask you to feel things. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions to begin to bring your attention to those places so that you can learn to feel. And if at any given point you can't feel the things I'm asking, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, right? But if you don't look, if you don't bring your attention there, you won't develop it, right? This is treating you now like the complete public. So, because we have to ask you, we have to direct your attention, and at the same time, we have to make it okay for you not to be able to feel it. Yeah? Do you see what I'm saying? Why? Why does it have to be okay for you not to feel it? You can get stressed out. Okay.
And you should do that touching someone else.
No. I talked about touching somebody else. No. ATM. Yeah. Yeah, well, because one of the most fundamental things is we don't judge ourselves. We make sensory distinctions. We make distinctions, but that's different than judgment, right? So yeah, it's another way of saying don't get stressed out. That the minute you start judging, the minute you're doing ATM and you start judging yourself, it's not, the learning doesn't go in. The learning just doesn't come in. Because in that moment of judgment, you've kind of that's right. Thank you. That's what I mean when I do that. Thank you. You narrow your focus from an inclusive attention to an exclusive attention. So, yeah. And we're trying to we're trying all the time to widen it, open it, the field of feeling the entire self. Okay. And the judgment just, okay. So, I'm saying a few things about when you start teaching groups, but you'll know all this by then, I'm sure, anyway. But at the moment you are also a group, so it doesn't hurt to be reminded, right? Any judgments in the last hour? Not about me, of course you make judgments about me. I'm a foreigner, I know. But I don't want to talk about myself. Anybody make any judgments about themselves in the last hour, or?
Would it be easier to say, and did anybody not?
Yeah.
I think we go too fast.
You go too fast. Well, it's just your tempo. Is it just your habit? Okay. Well, One of the reasons I like, and I wanted to do the left side, but we didn't quite get there. So one of the reasons I really like the hip and shoulder clocks is because if you are stuck in an approach which is exclusive attention, means that you're not able to spread your attention around to different places, and you try really hard, and this is not about going too fast, but this is more about being, achievement oriented type. We used to call it type A or something, like I got to get there as fast as I can, and I'm not going to, do any process stuff. I'm just going to go. So but you cannot solve that problem without a kind of equal division of attention between your hip and your pelvis, and a little bit for other parts, right? If you put all the attention on the shoulder, for instance, you can't do the movement. It's a great example of having to divide the attention. And people that are really in a hurry, and I don't have an impression of you going too fast, so I can't pick on you yet about this. I just don't know. I really don't know. I'll work on it though. But people that are just really driven, that the minute they hear an instruction, they've got to do it. They've got to do it. It's a washout with a problem like that. There's no way. Can't coordinate all that. So I like it. All right. So and again, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking already about you teaching ATM, because why not? It's going to come soon enough. But it's also, well, because Julie had me do this whole thing about teaching ATM for practitioners last year, so might as well talk about some of the ideas that it's really good when you construct your classes that you pick different lessons to give people different kinds of experiences of things within the method, and different ideas within the method, if you like, right? So you get away from necessarily thinking, I don't know what you would think. In the States now, we have this terrible thing of, I've been working with this one particular, I don't know what to call them, it's Feldenkrais resources in the States. Anyway, we've been doing workshops for 15 years or something, and we do a lot of one-day workshops there, and I do a lot of them. And as my colleague says, I'm really getting tired of all these body parts, because you say, flexible chest, all about the hip, all about the arms, hip joints. This is what people sign up for, right? So, and then it really came to a crisis, because I decided, okay, I'm going to do something on the hip joints. This was not that long ago. It was like a year and a half ago. So I advertised the hip joints, or in my theme, and there was like 3 or 4 people that hobbled into the room with like arthrosis and I don't know how many other kinds of things. Like they had really serious problems with their hip joints. They could hardly walk. And I thought, I've got way too much planned involving movement in the hip joints, and they're going to be completely inflamed, and they're going to kill themselves. And so I made some joke to one of them, I had to get them to imagine, to do less. Of course, the whole self was involved, but it just backfired. That these people who were not going to be able to do much hip movement came to my hip movement class, right? So finally this year we decided after all these years, no body parts. We're not giving those kind of themes. So then I tried differentiation and integration, which means absolutely nothing. And nobody's going to come to that unless they're already the people that come to everything. And so it was full, but because we have a group that comes. I don't know what to call them. Anyway, you'll go through all of that. So I'm getting off task here now, what I wanted to say. But, okay, so yeah, I'm just saying, however you construct your classes, but different kinds of experiences for people of the principles, of the ideas, of learning. You want them to learn to spread their attention more. How do you do it? Or, you see, and I think certain lessons are nice for certain opportunities, right? Yeah. So that had inherent in it whatever it had. Okay, good. Any comments? Have I said anything interesting yet?
Yes.
Hmm?
Has anybody written this down? What opportunities are available in each lesson? Because I see the numbers next to a lesson and I go, oh, it's from this series. I don't know what it's for.
Well, we're not going to spoon feed you completely and go through all the material and say, this is good for this is good. I mean, if you're going to be in the world of Feldenkrais, you're going to have to take certain things as a stretch. But it's more like that I'm pointing in a certain direction. I'm saying, oh, behind that door over there, there's some very interesting, I'm giving you some ideas. I mean, we could go through maybe Julie will do that with you next year if she decides, go through like a little bit of it. But that's something you're going to also find out through your own experience once it comes. That there's different kinds of lessons, different kinds of experiences. And yeah, I'll tell you where you can find the principles, actually. And they're very beautifully matched. Well, 10, 12, very beautifully matched. Start there. See where you go. I mean, that's where I started. But Feldenkrais did, in addition to being in the training with him, I did take a lot of workshops with him that he gave for the public, and I do think it had a big influence on me, because he didn't just give the lessons. He talked about principles and ideas like he does in the book. So you'll have that possibility. And if you start thinking sometimes about it now or in your notes or something like that, but they're your ideas. Like, you're the one that even before I just went like this and you said exclusive, inclusive, so you're already cooking on it, right? So you see what I mean? I just find this comes up a lot. And right now you're developing your ability to sense yourself before you start leading other people down the path, right? But it's just, it's terribly interesting and creative about teaching awareness through movement. And I'm trying to already, just right from the beginning, empower you to have your own ideas. Because then otherwise you get further along and you go, what am I meant to do with this and with that and this, right? You can have your own ideas right from the start, and lessons that you find particularly interesting. And I'm just sharing you an idea of, like, I like that because, all right, should we go on, do more awareness through movement? I noticed that there's no sipping of, one last sip. Oh, you're done. Good. All right, good. Please lie on your back. Sorry I had my back to you all, but, I don't know. It wasn't quite theater in the round. I needed to turn around to have it be theater in the round.